Alrighty, Wine with Jimmy here, and I'm on a breezy, windy location in the northern part of the West Sonoma Coast. We're at Annapolis, and I'm with Andy Peay. Andy, great to have you on board.
Happy to be here. Thank you for coming all the way up here.
It was a journey, but it's really worth it because you'll see around us you've got a spectacular location, which you're going to talk to us a little bit about because you searched high and wide for a location to start a vineyard with your brother, and you settled on here. So tell us why this was the one that you finally settled on.
Yeah, so we spent a couple of years looking around. My brother was a winemaker down in the Santa Cruz Mountains in California, and I was a retail buyer in San Francisco. And the wines that really excited us that we were interested in were wines that spoke of a specific place. Mm-hmm. So if you drank it, you're like, I can tell this is Nebbiolo grown on sandy soils because the people who were making it had a respect for it and knew that what they had, their piece of land was unique, and they wanted to capture it and not obfuscate it with winemaking ideas or intentionality about changing it. Mm-hmm. So transparency is what we wanted. This was the early 90s in California. That was not the ethos in California for the most part. There were exceptions, but most people were making big bombastic wines that were fruit forward, and fruit was leading the show and maybe the whole show. Mm-hmm. And so my brother, who was making wine in Santa Cruz, said, look, we have all these little microclimates here along the coast because of the Pacific Ocean. And if we can get right up against the Pacific Ocean, the Pacific is very, very cold, stays cold throughout the summer, and you have onshore weather that brings fog and wind, and that'll keep our temperatures low. We can make wines with high acid and lower alcohol and not as much fruit, and you can get other flavors, and tea and floral and iron and all these other notes that can create more interesting, complex wines. And so that was the idea. Mm-hmm. We trespassed up and down the coast, all the way from what's now Santa Rita Hills up through, we went to Oregon, even up to Walla Walla, but we were camped out on the Lost Coast in Humboldt County, which is known for that other product. And we came down the coast and found this ridge in 1996. And no one ever planted here. Everybody said, too cold, too wet, too remote. You'll never get it right. You guys are crazy. But it's really important when you're an entrepreneur to be young and naive. And so we're in our 20s and we're like, yeah, we can do this. Mm-hmm. This will work out because we think we know what we're doing and we're smart and we'll get this done. So we bought this land. It was an old sheep ranch and apple orchard. You can see these old rail fences here. Those were what kept the sheep in the paddock. So didn't have to do any clearing. This is the redwood coast that had already been cleared 150 years ago. And we planted eventually a 53-acre vineyard. And so you are standing on the knoll where my brother and Vanessa's the winemaker, got married. Vanessa was the winemaker Peter Michael when they met. And before that, she'd been in Europe at Lafite and Jean Gros and things like that. But they got married here. We don't really get too fine detailed on, did we hire her first? Had they checked each other out? I mean, we might have done a little old school. She got a vineyard, we got a winemaker, and we got it done.
It was meant to be.
It was meant to be, and he's wrong when they argue.
I love that story just for the fact that it's kind of crazy. You take two siblings, you throw them in the middle of nowhere, and you see what happens. And you guys have actually come out on top from it all. So there must have been some times you were thinking, what are we doing?
Oh, 100%. So the season that we planted was 98, and the first rains really came in earnest. We get 80 inches a year annually here, and the really big rains were coming in the December of 98. And I was down in grad school in Berkeley, and my brother called up and said, huge rains are coming, and they're not just big, they're huge. We'd already done all our erosion mitigation. We put in seed and straw and wattles and all the things. He's like, you need to get up here. And so I came up here after not having slept for a couple days, doing exams and then partying after exams. And I got up here, and we, through the night, with our trucks and skip steer loaders and everything, spreading seed and putting out more wattles and checking the silt ponds and everything. And so sometime around 5 a.m, we ran out of supplies. My brother and I are looking at each other, and it's teeming rain. And I had that moment, like, what the hell am I doing here? What have we done? And then the sun came up the next day and it was okay.
You could look back on that moment and go, well, it's a journey, and you're there at the end of you're in the middle of the journey now.
Yeah.
And you guys are specializing, of course, in cool climate grape varieties, Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, but you also have this fascination with Rhône varietals.
Yeah.
So where does this come from, and what are you trying to achieve with your Syrahs, your Viogniers, etc.?
Yeah, so my aha moment in wine was a Syrah. And I love Syrah. I drink a ton of it.
Which is unusual for Californian or even Americans. They don't tend to understand Syrah.
I don't know what's going on. I honestly don't. All the trade people do. All the sommeliers, all the retailers. We all love Syrah.
Yeah.
But we can't seem to get consumers interested in. And I've been on at least a dozen panels as an expert on a panel, trying to tell you what the problem of Syrah is, and nobody knows.
No.
Some people say it's because the styles are so divergent, whether it's warm climate blueberry pie, historical Shiraz that came in the 90s and early 2000s. We got a lot of it here.
But you get that.
But you get that in Pinot
Zin
and Chardonnay.
It's
not unique to Syrah. I don't get it.
No.
So anyway, my brother and I, when we planted, he said, look, we'll try a little Syrah, see what happens. Who's to say? This is a very different place than where people grow Syrah. And that's true everywhere. This is really cold for Syrah, and more importantly, we don't get the warmth that you get in the summer anywhere where Syrah is grown. Because we're up against the Pacific Ocean, because this breeze is bringing the cool air in, we might break 70 on a summer day. Not that often, unless we're having offshores. Like today, it's pretty warm, so it's above 70, but for the most part, it's staying quite cool. If you're thinking Northern Rhône, or you're thinking other places like that, you easily are getting the 80s most days.
Yeah.
They have shorter seasons, colder spring, different issues to deal with, but they're done growing by end of September, beginning of October. We're into November. We need that extra time to get that extra hang time, to get more sugar, to get the grapes right.
And what I've loved about your Syrahs is that for me with Syrah, I'm very, very interested in the Rotundone compound, in the pepper, the clove, whatever you want to call it, that spice compound. And the Australian Wine Research Institute has done tons of studies that really the cooler and the higher you go with it, if you can still ripen the fruit, you protect that. And what you've got in your wines is a lot of that pepper compound. For me, it's essential. If you lose that, I'm not that interested in the grape variety.
Yeah, in warm vintages, we start to lose it a little bit. So in cooler vintages is when we keep that, especially if it's a longer hang time. There's certain clones that we have that tend to have it more often than the other ones, and they're not necessarily the ones that we picked last.
Right.
So there's something going on there too.
Yeah.
But the great Syrahs that I've loved, some of them don't have it. They have more of that kind of leather and iron and all that.
Yeah.
But I like to have also some of that pepper component in there as a kind of a complexing agent.
And it's the same with your Viognier. Rhône varietal, it's not a wine that's oily and rich that you might find from Contrio, but you're making cool climate Viognier, which is fresh and bright. And
my brother worked for a guy, Bill Smith, who was the first American to bring Viognier in a year before John Alban, and he brought more in that next year with John Alban. But basically back in the 80s, the world was almost done with Viognier. You had Georges Vernet and Grillet and maybe a couple other guys, but they're pretty much going out of business. And they planted some here, and Bill planted it at his winery on Howell Mountain. Very warm climate, made the big blousy
west-facing,
aromatic, it was not, and Bill didn't like it very much, my brother didn't like it very much, it was just this big blousy thing. And so when we planted, Nick said, hey, Bill, can I get some cuttings to see what it's like in a cold place? We had no idea if it'd be any good. We planted just under an acre, so we had enough for a press load. And we made it, and we're like, oh, high acid, candied ginger, lemongrass, sour peach, super bright.
And it was in the
fresh.
glass, but it's so nice that it's of course all gone by now, right? Yeah. Fantastic. And you can feel the breeze coming through here. What a great location. So I think that sums up the location and uniqueness. Anything else to add about what you'd throw into the mix?
Yeah, I mean, what's unique about this place is its proximity to the Pacific Ocean, not just 3 miles, but also elevation 600 feet. So we're close enough that we're really moderated, but also we're on the San Andreas Fault. So if you look around, all hills, ridges, that's because San Andreas Fault, this is a subducting about 300 million years ago, and it cracked and created all this complexity, and we're on an uplifted seabed. So we make a wine named Scallop Shelf because we have scallop fossils in our soils, very nutrient poor, old sedimentary soils.
And it's important to note that the geology is just a bit different here in general as well. You've got the Gold Ridge Sandstone, which is down in the southern part of the West Sonoma Coast and down into the sort of the Green Valley. But here, with a different sort of shallow sea, it's sandstone. But what's the series called? Do you have a name?
It's called Olson Formation, but that is very specific.
Right.
There's only like 5 people who understand what that means. But it's essentially very similar composition to Gold Ridge as far as its silty, low clay content, low nutrient. Very similar to Gold Ridge, just it's a younger series.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you very much, Andy.
It's a pleasure.
Yes, and let's get tasting.
Let's do it.